Welcome back to the Rugby Tipsters preview of the Six Nations. With us, as always, is Jon Callard, the former England player and coach, looking through all the fixtures. We'll be kicking off with Italy versus Wales. Wales very much the focus of everyone's attention after their Triple Crown winning exploits against England in round 3. Most people would fancy them to make it 4 wins out of 4 in Rome before the big one against France. But hearing his thoughts now, Jon, can you see anything other than an away win for Wales?
No, comfortably so. And I think they demonstrated that against England. Impact, the word I use against England, not because they took those tries early doors, which are debatable, and we'll pass over that. Some errors, shall we say, but the way their bench come onto the field, Sheedy in particular made a huge difference. So the impact they made, I think Wales strong favourites to wrap that game up and look forward to hopefully, I would say, a decider against France the following week.
Yeah, Sheedy nailed his kicks, which was important, wasn't it? Because you always got the feeling that without Dan Biggar kicking the goals, they may struggle, but he certainly stepped up to the plate.
Oh, absolutely. And they weren't easy goals either. They were quite from some distance and a lot of pressure to stretch the lead out. So he did really well. I thought he managed the game really well. What was interesting in that game as well was the contrast. England played a lot more off 10 and 12, where Wales played off 9 significantly. And one of their top passers was Adam Beard. So it just showed the nature of the way that they played the game compared to where England played it.
Well, you've preempted my next question. Talking about 9s, Kieran Hardy is out, but it's not like they have too much strength in. It's not like that they don't have any strength in depth in the scrum half position.
Yeah, well, Gareth Davies has already started, and he's got the chance of coming on and regaining that shirt. And also they got Lloyd Williams, so who can back them up as well. So yeah, it's a nation that's proud for producing scrum half. So I wouldn't have thought anything other than that they would have good strength in depth.
And keeping the scrum half theme, Stephen Varney, he had to pull out at the last minute, which was a blow against Ireland, wasn't it? Because he'd been playing well in the first couple of rounds, but he's back in training. The teams won't be out until, I think Wales is the first to announce on Thursday. So we're recording this just to let everyone know before the teams are announced. But Italy will certainly be hoping that Varney is back. And he's been one of their few bright prospects, hasn't he? Disappointed with their display against Ireland to concede that many points?
I feel sorry for them, Jon. I feel sorry for them. As much as Ireland was good at finishing the line breaks, and that's probably all down to the Leinster back line all being together, playing for Ireland, I thought Ireland were ruthless in that area. I felt sorry for Italy, and I'll tell you why. I was disappointed with the referee, Matthew Reynaud. And I'll tell you why I was disappointed with him. I thought he didn't work with the players to try and get the game going for Italy. He just pinged them straight away for, yes, there are offences, but you watch the English referees and Nigel Owens and Jacob Piper, who will come to talk about him. I think he's going to be crucial this weekend. You work how they work with the players because they're part of the process of making the game that it is. So I was very disappointed with Matthew Reynaud, and that's my opinion. Other people can have their opinion, of course. And I thought that knocked on effect to Italy. It sapped their strength a little bit, sapped their belief, and then, Ireland run out comfortable winners.
So just before we move on to Le Crunch, England versus France, Wales by how many?
3, 4 comfortable scores, and I'm talking, converted tries.
So moving on to the next game, which could have been a game that decided the title. That's what many people would have thought at the start of the Six Nations. But England, of course, their odds are probably longer than our lids at the moment during lockdown. Not impossible for England to win the championship now. But France, of course, 2 wins from 2, postponed game against Scotland, still in good shape. And they go to Twickenham hoping to overturn their narrow defeat at the hands of England during the Autumn Nations Cup final. Can they do it, JC?
I think so. Even though they've missed a week with the postponement of the Scottish match, they may be a little bit rusty, as we've talked about, but I think they might be ready because of that game time, or lack of game time has allowed them to rest up. I think it's 16 years since they've won at Twickenham, France. So I think they've got a great opportunity to steal the spoils, and I mean steal the spoils, and keep in on the right side of the referee. I think that France just might sneak it.
Talking of the referee, Andrew Brace was the man in the middle for that Autumn Nations Cup final, and he got a little bit of grief, didn't he, from followers over the channel. But he's back, so that could be a big talking point.
Yeah, and it is a big talking point because he's a late replacement, or a late replacement to us, that he's replacing Jacko Piper. Now, Jacko Piper was originally the man in the middle, and Andrew Bryce now has taken charge. What a great opportunity for him. What do I know of Andrew Bryce? Yes, he was the man in the middle for that game, and there were some contentious penalties at the end. But I suspect that wasn't just Andrew Bryce. I think that was more of the team collaborating together. They won't do that again in this game, I don't think. And I think he's a great up-and-coming referee. He's already demonstrated his strengths in this championship. So I'm looking forward to his performance as much as I'm looking forward to France and England performing.
For France, they look to be going from strength to strength in terms of the players at Fabien Galtier's disposal. Vakatawa back in midfield with his power, and also Roman Ntamack, giving him a real selection headache at number 10, with Jalabert having performed pretty well so far.
Jalabert has performed well, but I think in the last game against Ireland, they did miss a few kicks. It's tricky at the Aviva Stadium, yes, I know, with the wind and the way it gets around there. And by the way, those factors might come into play on the weekend with the wind and gusting around Twickenham. So it may be a shootout between the goal kickers. France are running at 70%. England are running at 75% success rate with the goal shoots. He may want to play Ntamack. He might want to bring him off the bench and have an impact, as Wales do with their bench. And look what impact they have.
So, in terms of the game itself and how you think it's going to pan out, are you hopeful that England can salvage some pride, or do you think the French bandwagon will keep on rolling?
I think England need to look at their discipline. You know, they're giving away 14 and a half penalties, including free kicks in that, I state. You know, we equate that to quite some territory that you give up and points that you give up as well, potentially. So I think they need to look at their discipline. The tackle count's exactly the same in both games. They're both averaging the same amount of tackles and missing the same amount of tackles. So I think that'll be even, but it'll be the penalties that make the difference. If England don't concede those penalties and can frustrate France, I think they might come out with a famous win. But I think if England do concede the penalties that they have been conceding, it just hands over the momentum to the French. French are brilliant at the moment, I believe, in my book, at being able to read when and when not to counter-attack back when the ball is kicked them. England do a lot of kicking. On that note, then France, with their selection of kick returns, knowing when and where to do it, might just hold up the upper hand.
We've all been talking up France's attack. What about England's? With those average of 14 penalties a game, that's obviously stymied them with ball in hand, but can they get some fluency going against France?
Well, they should be encouraged. In the last international against Wales, I thought they scored 2 cracking tries and should have created, or they did create, but should have scored a few more. Not the obvious last pass, whatever, but they their shape created that opportunity to give that one pass, just a little bit, one pass out, so to speak, just to play a little bit further, wider, quicker into the strike runners. They tend to just bust it up, and just take away that momentum that they created, and then the defense can reorganize, fold over, so to stop that overlap happening. So I'm hoping that they've done their homework. They've looked at the tape and said, "Go, we played some good stuff here, fellas, but this one pass or that pass here will give us greater opportunities to take those tries that we're creating."
So, in terms of a score, what are you thinking?
Sadly, I think of France.
Yeah.
And what we talked about there, penalties may be an issue, but I think also that France have demonstrated in this tournament they're the best at receiving kicks and deciding when and when not to attack. And I think that's the difference in their instead of just running it from everywhere, they play the waiting game, and when the opportunities they're on. And I think it's tight margins like that just goes in their favour.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they go with Dulin or Bouthier, because Bouthier's got that massive boot as well as the ability to counter-attack. So yeah, really interesting game at Twickenham, and equally so, Scotland versus Ireland. Scotland missed out on the opportunity to keep a pace with everyone because of the postponed game in Paris, but now they're up against an Ireland team who are buoyed by that win in Rome. So that break may have counted against them, maybe?
Yes, I think so. And also the other factor is those players that don't play in Scotland were sent away to play for their clubs. So some of the bigger names have had to travel back to England playing a very, very competitive game in the Premiership and travel back up to Scotland. You don't know how much fatigue that will have on those big superstars. So my view is, I think Ireland will be buoyed by that performance. And in terms of converting their possession, they didn't have much possession. They didn't have much possession. Sorry, the territory, converting the lack of territory, but their line breaks were finished off, in particular Keenan, who was superb that game. So I'm thinking that Ireland will be buoyed by that and will be too strong for Scotland at Murrayfield.
Yeah, Keenan's performance throws up an interesting question for Andy Farrell, because Jacob Stockdale, I believe, is available for the first time.
Yes, he's back. And I would have thought, for continuity reasons, and this is just my view, is that Conor Murray's back as well. Conor Murray will go back on the bench, I would have thought, and he will probably, I'm not saying probably, but carrying on the momentum of the last game, probably keep the whole Leinster back line together. It did so well, so give them the opportunity at Scotland away. JC,
brilliant analysis as always. It'll be fascinating to see that penalty count in the England-France game. That's probably going to be the closest of the two, unless, of course, you say otherwise for Scotland-Ireland. What's your prediction for that one?
I honestly believe it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think Scotland will score lots of points. Ireland will score lots of points, but I'm expecting Ireland to come out on top.
Great stuff. Talk to you next week for round 5.